This is the book Beat Depression by David Hinds from the year 2001. Chapter 53, The Default Settings of Your Mind. We know what we are, but know not what we may be. William Shakespeare, 1564 to 1616, Hamlet. The bottom line: one little change of mind can unlock the deadlock. Now is a convenient time to return to a familiar theme of mine, the analogy between the human mind and a computer. For the benefit of those who are not computer buffs, which incidentally includes most of us, I should point out that if you tell a computer to do something, it will continue to do it until you tell it otherwise. For instance, if the setting on your computer is preset to leave 2 spaces after a full stop, that is what you will get unless it is specifically altered to leave only 1 space. One can parallel this with the mind of a depressed person. Their tendency will be to follow the same pattern of thought and not be capable of lifting themselves out of depression. Their pattern of outmoded, negative thinking must be replaced by a revised way of thinking, which will lead them to recovery. In other words, the default setting in the mind must be altered to allow you to make progress. To achieve this, it will be necessary to switch from outmoded to revised thinking at the birth of our thoughts, at the very moment they enter our conscious awareness. That is what we shall be doing in the next 2 chapters, and it will not be difficult. In fact, it may even be rather fun. This is the book Beat Depression by David Hinds from 2001. And this is chapter 54, D Thoughts. Great thoughts come from the heart. Marquis de Vauvenargues, 1715 to 47. The bottom line: diffuse D thoughts. D thoughts are depressing thoughts. Before we successfully adopt and benefit from a concept different to the one we are accustomed to, I find it helps to first know what not to do. With revised thinking, the concept by which you are going to banish depression and bring laughter, happiness, and opportunity into your life, it is crucial to diffuse D thoughts. D thoughts are dangerous thoughts, and we don't want any more of them. Not only are D thoughts dismal, dangerous, and depressing, they are disabling as well because they drain you of the power to choose today how you will feel. For instance, if you lose your job, you could succumb to a wave of D thoughts and despair at the prospect of ever getting another job. This is natural, but the important thing is to move forward to the position where you can regard this enforced change as an opportunity to get a better job, downshift, or start an enterprise of your own. The essential difference between these 2 thought patterns, the one outmoded thinking and the other revised thinking, is the absence of D thoughts, the self-deprecating thoughts that immediately spring to mind if you let them. D thoughts should not be confused with the irritation and disappointment we feel when things go wrong, or the natural grieving process we experience over the death of a loved one. D thoughts are an entrapment of mind born of habits in hard or threatening times, and they lead us into a crisis of despair and hopelessness. They condition us to expect the worst, and we must learn to stifle them at birth so that they cannot drag us down into depression and keep us there. We will find out how to do this in the next chapter, but first let's see how destructive thoughts can be. According to a study published in the British Journal of Psychiatry in November 2000, the death of Princess Diana caused an alarming increase in the suicide rate throughout England and Wales. The increase was especially high among young women. Analysis of official government figures has revealed that the suicide rate jumped by almost a fifth, 17.4%, in the 4 weeks following her funeral. The researchers, led by Professor Keith Horton of the Warneford Hospital, Oxford, also found that cases of attempted suicide, including drug overdoses and other deliberate means of self-harm, increased by 44% the week after Diana's death. With hospital admissions of women up a staggering 65%, the main contributing factor in almost all depressive illnesses and suicides is negative thinking, thoughts. In the next chapter, there is a technique for diffusing thoughts that anyone, from a child to a pensioner, can get to grips with. You are about to revise the default setting for your mind and to reach for recovery. This is the book Beat Depression by David Hinds from the year 2001. Chapter 55, The Revised Setting for Peace of Mind. Great emergencies and crises show us how much greater our vital resources are than we had supposed. William James, 1842 to 1910. The bottom line, it's time to switch from outmoded thinking to revised thinking. Ivan Petrovich Pavlov, 1849 to 1936, who received a Nobel Prize for his work on the digestive system and conditioned reflexes, is the Russian physiologist who is going to help me to make the concept of revised thinking supremely easy for you to understand. The most famous of Pavlov's experiments were his studies on the behavior of dogs. He would ring a bell and then feed the dogs. He repeated this procedure many times over a period of weeks. He rang the bell, the dogs salivated and ate the food. After a time, the dogs would salivate at the sound of the bell, even when no food was available. He described their response to the bell as a conditioned reflex. Bell, salivation, food. This type of reaction responding instantaneously to a stimulus became known as the Pavlovian response, and it was the source of Pavlov's insights into human behavior. Our basic human thought processes, Pavlov found, work in much the same way, and this is why it is sometimes necessary to revise the default settings of our minds. That is to say, the stimuli that set us off on the wrong track. When we hear the bell, we don't want to salivate when no food is forthcoming. Likewise, we do not want to think the worst when the worst is not necessarily the only thing on offer. Sadly, many of us have unconsciously conditioned ourselves in depression to do just that, ignoring all other happier options by default. As humans, we can make ourselves aware that such stimuli are false, that we do not have to make a conditioned response. We can be aware of falling into the de-thought trap and turn away from it. Our perceptions determine what we actually experience in any given situation because they make us receptive to some stimuli and blind to others. Those of us who expect to find problems in a given situation are usually able to find them, while those of us who expect to find opportunities in the same situation will also be successful. In order to revise the default setting of your mind from unhelpful de-thoughts to positive, forward-looking thinking, I am going to ask you to do 3 things. The code name I use for the process you are about to undertake is SS30. SS30. 1. S. Stop. Every time you catch yourself thinking a negative depression-inducing de-thought, you should dismiss that thought immediately from your mind by thinking of Pavlov's dogs salivating at the mouth, before switching your thoughts to something good, satisfying and positively in your favor. Your revised thought can be any nice thought you please, a fond or happy memory from the past, or a promising thought about the future, but absolutely no de-thoughts of any kind. For example, if you need help but find it difficult to ask for help, think how you feel when someone asks for your help and you give it. You feel good, don't you? 2. S. Suspend any disbelief in the effectiveness of this process for a period of 30 days. Please do exactly as I ask, even if you feel far from optimistic about the outcome right now. I want you to get well, and I know you can do it. 3. 30 days is how long it can take to make or break a habit, or to revise the default setting of your mind. To be certain of success, you must keep on banishing de-thoughts from your mind every second of every minute of every waking hour for 30 days. Don't worry, it becomes easier by the day. Very soon, you will be a revised thinker. You will have succeeded in resetting the default setting of your mind, and you will beat depression.